Let's start. Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear us, see us? All I see is blank faces out there. No videos on.
You're good. I hear
Good, awesome. Thanks, Sabina. So welcome to our Thrive Week event. Talking to a bunch of alum here at AUC. I'm gonna have them go around and introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. So do you want me to call you guys out?
I guess I'll start.
Okay.
Hey, I'm Ashley. I'm initially from Canada. I graduated in 2019, and I'm currently in my first year of residency. Well, finishing up my first year of residency in New Jersey.
Thank you, Ashley. Dr. Khanna's in internal medicine, and she's a PGY2 now.
Hi, I'm Clint. I'm originally from Texas, graduated 2019 also. I'm finishing my first year at Rush University in Chicago in anesthesia.
Thanks, Dr. Gunn.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Dan. I am finishing my first year of internal medicine at the Aurora Sinai St. Luke's in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Thanks, Dr. Munt.
Should I go next?
Oh yeah, you can go, Crystal.
Oh, sorry. Hi, my name is Crystal. I graduated in August of 2019, so I'm just starting residency. Well, I actually started yesterday, family medicine residency in Philadelphia.
Thanks, Dr. Douglas. Not Dr. Douglas, Dr. Arundel. And then Dr. McFarland.
Yeah, I'm Jessica McFarland. I am just finishing up my PGY 1 year at UCSF Fresno for internal medicine.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. McFarland. And you guys, most of you know me. My name is Sobi, and I will be doing internal medicine residency, and I've been your medical education fellow for a while now. Okay.
And I'm here. Don't forget me.
Oh, sorry. Dr. Gatt, go ahead.
Okay. I'm Adriana. I'm one of the ICM fellows. So I've been on the island. I'm August 2019 grad, and I'm about to start PGY1 for anesthesia in Florida. And I'm originally from New York.
Okay. So the way that we're going to be, we have like one or two more people coming, and as they come in, we'll have them introduce themselves. But we're going to focus around basically the end of AUC and residency and the ERAS process and the match. We're going to go over some things that I prepared ahead of time, and then we'll basically open it up for questions. So there are 3 questions that I asked. The first one, what is something you wish you knew before filling out ERAS? And that's an open discussion for everybody. And while they're thinking, I guess I can start and say, have your CV filled out like as you go through medical school, because it makes it so much easier filling out that whole process, knowing dates, knowing everything you've done, and not forgetting something. And as soon as you hit that submit button, you're just like, oh, I forgot that. So have your CV up to date as you go on.
For ERAS, also don't underestimate the hobbies interest section. Put some thought into it. I'd say 90% of my interviews ask me about something that I wrote in my hobbies interest section. So put some thought into it. Don't leave it blank. It's a great conversation starter. And I feel like a lot of people that interviewed tried to start with that so that it can flow easily more into, you know, why this specialty, why you want to be here type stuff. And it like kind of broke the ice really well. So put thought into it and don't leave it blank.
Did anybody put something
going off of like what Adriana was saying too, put something really weird would be my recommendation. No one cares if you are into running and into cooking. They've probably seen that on 100, but if you have a weird hobby, like I know someone who does silk painting or someone who specifically likes to garden vegetables. So something that allows me to say, oh, this is cool. I want to just ask this person about it. Because in general, in your interviews, you're not going to be asking and talking about medicine as much unless you can tell the people who are really focused on their just getting in as opposed to people who are more relaxed. And if you're more relaxed and have these hobbies, I think you'll fare better in the interview.
Also, I would say to be prepared about like how much it's going to cost. I think I applied to 150 programs, and I don't really remember the exact amount because I think I like passed out as I was pressing send. But does someone remember exactly how much it was? But it was a lot of money.
Couple
It's like
thousand easily.
99 for the first 10 programs, and then I think it's like 20 for the next 10 programs, and then it's like 30 for the next everything after that.
Altogether,
so it
I think
ends up being a lot. Yeah.
like what, like almost $5,000 or something like that.
Mine cost about $5,000 because you have to fly everywhere too, remember?
No, just my apps cost about $4,500 just to applicate, like on
Just
September
to apply.
15th, submit. Yeah. But that was 2 specialties, so it's a little bit different. But yeah.
And just
Before-
one last thing that sorry, Zoe, can I just
No, that's
add
okay.
one more
You go.
So one thing that I was actually told by a program director before I actually sent in my application was that, you know, she looked at my CV, she looked at my whole ERAS application essentially, and she said, you know, what jobs did you do before you went to medical school? And I'm like, oh, you know, like I just had like, you know, the typical retail jobs that you do when you're in college or undergrad. And she goes, well, I want to see that because I want to see, you know, that you're a well-rounded person. I want to see that you have, you know, other experiences that can help you with medical school or, you know, being in residency or, you know, if you were a shift manager at a job, add that because that adds skills that they look for. So don't discredit, you know, random little things that you think aren't important.
And before we keep going, sorry, Clint, I just want to introduce Dr. Garrity because she just joined. So Dr. Garrity, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, just where you're from, what you're doing, where you are, when you graduated?
Hi, everyone. I'm Becca. I graduated last year, and I'm from Northern California, and I'm in Memphis at University of Tennessee Health Science Center in internal medicine pediatrics residency. If you haven't heard of it, it's the best one out there. Sorry, everyone else. And you should do it. And I'm happy to talk to anyone about it if they're interested.
So what the question we're answering right now is, what is something you wish you knew before filling out ERAS? And Clint, go ahead and take that one away.
I was just gonna kind of add to Crystal's point. I thought that a lot of my jobs and a lot of my like little hobbies and interests were kind of like not important or minuscule, but if you come up with like any kind of story that makes it interesting that you can talk about, because it gets to the point where in interviews you kind of end up just wanting to talk about something else other than like medicine or your grades or what you did in the island, and it's just kind of a breath of fresh air so that you can like ramble about a story, a personal story. And I think program directors and people interviewing you also like that, because I think doing however many 100 interviews they do too, they kind of get tired of talking about the same stuff also. So you know, if you were like a cashier or something at a grocery store, just like maybe come up with like a story to keep them interested.
Did anybody put something super weird on theirs, like what Dan was talking about and Adriana was talking about, and had like it come up in an interview?
I talked about making cupcakes in my personal statement and in my ERAS, and I spoke about making cupcakes at every single interview that I went on, every single one they asked me, and I told them that I would bring it as well. I don't know if that helped or not, though.
I put unicycling on my hobbies, interests, and I wrote my personal statement about college cheerleading. So every single interview asked at least one of those things.
Under my hobby, I put chicken nugget eater, and 2 interviews stopped me midway and they said, why do you like chicken nuggets so much? And I told them a story that I had come up with it because I put it on there and they loved it. So that's one thing.
But you have to speak to it. Like, you have to be able to say, yes, I do this. No, I don't do that. Like, you have to have a reason why that is. So even if you come up with a story, like, you got to have something, because they will ask.
And just like in general, know your ERAS application really well. Like I was in multiple interviews where I could tell that the person interviewing me like didn't really have time to fully look over my jacket. And it would be awkward for me to like open up my little, you know, that little carrier thing that everybody has to like pull them out to show it. So like know all the awards that you've gotten. If you have any publications, know what that's about. Like, have something to say for everything, and just be really well prepared so that there's no awkward silences.
To kind of add on to what Jess was saying, there were some people that have read your whole application and they will know it before you walk in the room. And there's also interviewers that have no idea who you are and has not even glanced at it. And so those people tend to just open the packet in front of you and kind of go down the list and pick something and ask you about it. It's great. That's why you need to know your application really well. But at the same time, a backup thing that I did to kind of, after I picked up on that, was I printed out like my 2 recent posters that were like anesthesia specific that I just presented at the ASA, and I had them printed for them also. So if that came up and it was like kind of getting a weird conversation, at least I had it offhand as well. So just something that you can do. If there's some like important publications or presentations that you did, I urge you to bring a printout of it or something.
Another thing I would say to be prepared for, which I encountered a lot, is for the interviewer to not have any questions. So I had a lot of interviewers sit down and they're just like, okay, so tell me about yourself, or what do you want to know about our program? They literally had no questions, and I had that happen so many times. So just be prepared if the interviewer just wants to have a chat about anything, because I was caught off guard a few times with that.
Try to make your extra questions also a way that you can turn it into talking to make you individualized. So like my questions were always kind of about medical education and how like they form their GME or something very specific that show that that's what I'm interested in pursuing. So it ends up turning more into conversation after just your question, because there are interviewers, like Crystal said, that come in and have absolutely nothing to ask you, and they just say, what do you want to know about us? And so when you can turn a question into a conversation about yourself as well, it helps you stand out a little bit. So try to find things that you are interested in within that specialty and kind of attack that every time. It's easier to do.
And you don't have to have a new question every time. I asked the same exact question every single interview. And then I actually included that in my ranking of interviews and was like, this is how they answered X question. And like, if you, like Adriana said, if you're interested in medical education, that's something great. Like if that's important to you and you think you want to do that long-term, you need to be asking about that because you want to be at a program that emphasizes that for their residents. For me, it was social discriminants of health. Like, are you addressing, do you have a population that needs help? Are you addressing people who are quote unquote lesser than? Like, how are you doing that? And just like having that thing that you can compare across the board is helpful.
And then what piece of advice would you guys give to a 4th year or a final year medical student here at AUC specifically?
With regards to the application process?
With regards to anything, yeah.
I mean, I think obviously your whole 4th year is just like utterly consumed with worrying about matching and what programs you're going to go to. And, you know, I was one of them. I was so, you know, caught up with trying to match back in California, and it was very nerve-wracking. And I was fortunate to have a good amount of interviews. And I would just say that, you know, just enjoy the interview. Try not to stress about it as much. I know, which is easier said than done. Like all these people, at least from my experience, like every interviewee, they just want to have a conversation with you. They want to be somebody that they want to work with. And now having gone through this year's interviewing cycle and like talking to potential candidates, that's really all that I'm looking for. Like if they're giving you an interview, you're qualified. You're qualified to be in their program. The next step is just seeing, you know, how well do you fit in that program? And you'll get a sense of it too, you know, your first few hours, even in the interview process, you know, comparing yourself to the other residents that are there, and how you get along with them, and you know, what the call schedule is and what you're looking for. You'll know right away whether or not you fit in. So just enjoy the interview process and day and have a good conversation with somebody, because I think that that's ultimately, you know, what's going to get you ranked high up, is if they want to work with you.
You really want to come off like how Jess was saying, you really want to come off as someone that is willing to work on a team, willing to put in the hours, you know, don't be too stringent on their call schedule. They don't want to hear someone that's going to complain. Try not to give those vibes off. And my advice is, if there's a program that you really like or a location that you really like, maybe not do that interview first. If you have a choice, sometimes you don't have a choice. Because those first kind of interview jitters really go away after the first one, and you see really kind of how laid back they are for most specialties. So yeah, that would be my advice, is to try to not schedule a really important one or a great program that you might be interested in first, and maybe try to get a practice one out.
My advice is just to definitely reach out to the programs that you're really interested in, because each program is interviewing at probably like 10 times the amount of residents, 10 times the amount of applicants for residents that they're going to have. So they need to know that you're actually really genuinely interested in that program. So if you are, definitely reach out after the interview and let them know. And also, I think you guys should be prepared for virtual interviews this upcoming season, because I know my program has already said they're basically for sure going to do it virtually. So you have to figure out a different way to kind of get a feel of the program. So it's going to be different. You'll save some money, but it's going to be different to get a grasp or a feel for the program if you're not there.
I want to echo what Crystal said, both points actually. My top 3 places on my match list were interviews that I only got because I emailed the program coordinator. I would have never gotten them if I wouldn't have emailed them. And that's like a good thing to differentiate. So when you look up your programs, you're going to see program coordinator and program director. Don't even bother wasting your time emailing the program director. This is the MD who's has a clinic, who's running service, he will be your entry point, or he or she will be your entry point once you get into the interview. But it's the program coordinators that really control the interviews. So those are the people you need to reach out for. The second thing is, going off of what Crystal said, you're going to be doing your virtual interviews. The best way that you can make a good impression, obviously you can look at all of our Zoom backgrounds. They all look pretty horrible. You should set up like a light facing into your face. You should have good lighting. You should have a good background, because it's going to set you apart from everyone else. Like if you look at all of ours, Becca looks like she's in a closet. So this is something to be cognizant of, because it shows that you actually care enough to make it work. So maybe set up some sort of place to make you feel comfortable, but look good as well.
Dan, your lighting and your situation looks good. Very good.
Yeah, Dan, you came prepared.
Thank you. No, I had to leave because it was raining outside.
I would say to not underestimate a letter of recommendation in your specialty. I know you've heard that probably many times, but there was 2 interviews I can remember in particular where they actually knew the person who wrote my letter of recommendation. And one of those places I matched at, but I don't know for sure how much that mattered, but it sure was a thing to talk about. And you know, when the 2 people interviewing me mentioned that letter of recommendation writer's name, they kind of lit up, and I think that it was, like, again, something to set me apart. So I think that should be something that you work on getting pretty soon.
And to echo, sorry to talk twice in a row, but one of the things I did for emailing programs is I had my letters of recommendation, I had 3, and then I had one that I knew, and I saved it until a month like a month after the application. And then I sent every single program coordinator an email that said, just letting you know, I added another letter of recommendation. I'm really interested in this program. And I had the script set up. So that's how I got these interviews, because instead of just saying, hey, I like your program, I had kind of a reason, whatever, to contact them.
A lot of the national conferences, if you get an abstract or some kind of presentation to do, happen in like September, October, November. There's like a big group of them. So that's kind of what I did with Dan. You can't put future things that have been accepted without presenting them on ERAS. So I waited till the October date. Applications have been out for a little while. A lot of programs just start putting out interview invites in October, and that's kind of that love letter. So I would write, just like Dan said, have a reason for emailing them. Write something about yourself that makes you a little bit different. Write something about the program that you found online of why you want to go there specifically. One of the programs was doing a study on stress levels of residents, and I was like, this is really cool. Like, so it shows that you put effort into actually researching them individually and specifically why you want to go there. And I got really great, I know I got at least 2 interviews just from that interview process, as well as going to those conferences and meeting them. I made business cards and printed out CVs for the ASA meet and greet. Certain national conferences will have meet and greets with residency program directors. And so just show up to those. You don't have to have something to present, but just show up to those and meet everyone, write your name down on emails. Some programs straight just interviewed everyone that signed up at their booth. So be aware of that. And I know it might be hard because of COVID now. A lot of conferences are getting canceled, but they're doing virtual stuff so you could save money and hopefully go to those similar things.
And just one last thing that I'll add in here. Everyone had really, really great points. And just the one thing to remember is that you can't underestimate, the power of, just kindness and respectfulness when you're dealing with people in all these programs. So when you're, emailing the program coordinator or you're, talking to any of the senior residents, example, you have to, present yourself in a way that they'll have a good first impression of you, because that's all they'll get. So we had interviewees come in and they were honestly, for lack of a better term, just very weird. And so they would, of course, they're very eager, but they would do things that would really, really just put us off, and their name got immediately crossed off our ranking list. So people would be so eager that they would, sneak into residence lounges and say that someone let them in, but no one really did. Or just being very, very disrespectful to people like the program coordinators, who, by the way, have a lot of power, more power than you would even imagine that they have in terms of your ranking or how people view you. So just be mindful of how you're interacting with every single person in the program, whether it's security officer at the front of the hospital, the secretary, just absolutely everyone.
And send thank you emails or letters. I sent thank you emails. I thought they were sufficient.
And then before we open up the floor to questions, does anyone have something that they wish they knew before starting residency?
Everything.
Oh, don't worry.
One thing that I wish I knew is that everyone deals with imposter syndrome. So you may always think that, I'm the only one who feels like, I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart enough, or how did I get here? But if you really start to talk to people, you really realize that a lot of people in your residency are dealing with the same feelings. It's just everyone's trying to put on a good face. So before you guys start your first year of residency, just know that if you have feelings of inadequacy, or that, everyone's smarter than me, there's other people who are feeling that too. So that would be my biggest advice as you go into your first year of residency.
That's very on brand for our Thrive Week, our Wellness Week this week. So thank you, Ashley.
Yeah, and just going off of that, I think I remember the couple months approaching starting residency, I was like, should I be studying? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing more to prepare? And I think in hindsight, no, just enjoy the time. It's the last couple months you're ever going to have of absolute freedom. So enjoy it. Even if you feel like you're not up to par with some of the other residents starting, you're going to catch up so quick. So no matter where you start off in residency, whether or not you're the top of the class or you're at the bottom, you all finish around the same exact level, because you have the same experiences and you grow quick.
If you guys think of more as we go on, just share them. But I'm going to open it up if anyone has any questions.
You can type it in the chat too if you guys don't want to speak.
Hi, everyone. I actually have a quick question. So I know some of you mentioned that your programs already said they're not going to have in-person interviews. They're all going to be virtual. And from what I've seen, at least from people discussing their previous experiences during interviews, they get kind of a vibe from the interview day itself. So with virtual interviews, how do you navigate how to get the vibe from the program? What kind of things are you going to be looking for? What do you suggest for people going through this in this type of way?
I think one thing that we touch on is I'm really serious. Make the lighting right. Make sure that you're checking your speaker. This shouldn't be the very first time that you get your speaker checked or anything. Whether or not you use like headphones or you're using your computer speaker, you should have someone that you know or trust on the other end tell you, yes, this is working, yes, this is not, because it really is gonna make a big difference, I think. Especially if you're having issues where I'm trying to interview you and you say, but I'm like, oh, I can't hear you, I can't hear you. I'm basically gonna just say, sorry.
I think what's going to be the hardest thing to replace is the dinners the night before. So a lot of programs invite you to dinners with residents the night before an interview, and that's truly where I got most of my real questions answered and the real vibe between the residents, because those are the people you're going to be working with. The interview day, because it's so scheduled and kind of a little strict, because you're like really on your best behavior, everyone's in suits, it's like very professional, whereas the night before is a little bit more relaxed. You can really talk to the residents and see, you know, how is your relationship with your program director? Do you guys, some of them text him every day and, you know, joke and send him memes, and some are like, no, we don't interact with him at all. And so certain things might be important for you, so try to ask those questions. I know it'll be a little bit more difficult, but ask, you know, how are your relationships between resident classes? Do you guys hang out together? Are you more like just the intern class versus second, third, fourth? How do you communicate with your program director? Do you go through your coordinator every single time? So maybe those questions, don't underestimate how much value you'll get from them, because you won't really get, if they're virtual, you won't really get that experience the night before.
And also to piggyback off of what Adriana just said, what I learned from all of my interviews is that at most of the places you're going to get a good medical education. You're going to learn what you need to learn, and you're going to be hopefully a wonderful physician. But like she said, you need to get along with your co-residents and the other residents. So that's really like a really important thing you need to feel out. And also you need to make sure just the area is someplace where you would want to just live for 3 to 5, whatever years. But as far as like the education, most residencies, you're going to get a great education. So I would focus more on the relationship.
And you're right, it's going to be hard to like feel these things out when you're doing this all virtually. So I would say now more than ever, it would be to identify your top places from what you think are going to be your top choices and really try to do an away elective there. Because I learned a lot about the programs that I did my away rotations at. Places that I thought I would rank number 1, number 2, I actually went and rotated at and changed my mind. So I think try to push for that if you're really interested in a program, but also concerned about how you may or may not fit in there. Just at least try to do something there.
Another thing that might help, so I actually had a virtual interview as one of my interviews, and it was a program that I thought was in a great area. I thought, you know, it had a decent reputation. And when I did the virtual interview, they zoomed me into a conference room, which I was not expecting. I thought it was going to be kind of like this or multiple people or whatever. It was into a conference room and there was about 8 people in it, kind of rapid fire questioning. It was horrifying. And that kind of didn't give me a great vision of the program. So what I did was I actually emailed them after in my thank you email and asked them if I could go see it in person. So I kind of, if there's 1 or 2, I know COVID's going to be a total different ballgame for you guys, but if there's like your number 1 program that you think you want to go to or rank them number 1, email them and ask if you could come in person. It really does change how you see things. It actually, that program ended up going to the bottom of my list after I went in person because it was just handled horribly. They weren't like expecting me. They were expecting me, but like they almost forgot I was coming. It was bad. So you don't want to go there either. You know, they can have a great online presence and they might email you through the coordinator really well, but when you actually get there, they don't really want you there or don't care if you're there, and then you rank them lower. So maybe ask them to go visit in person if you can, if you have the option.
I'll say also that everyone's super nervous on the residency directors, program directors, like coordinators. Everyone's really nervous about this match year as well. It's not just the applicants. Like they're petrified that they won't fill their spots because they also can't show off to you. So if you have questions, I think it's even more important to email. And we've discussed our program doing like Zoom meetings with the residents, somehow tying it in to try and simulate those dinners. It's not going to be anywhere close. And I feel, you know, but your engagement is going to be the most important. So if you get invited to that sort of thing, even if you're like, oh, this is going to be super awkward, you know, you need to go. Like if you're interested in the program at all, then A, like go. B, if you're not interested, don't apply. Like it's silly. Don't waste your money. But programs are also going to be looking at that many more people because they can just do virtual interviews. So you're going to be in a bigger pool, and probably if you're not going to be traveling this interview season, you need to apply to more places and use that money that you wouldn't be, like you would be spending to travel on more applications. It is expensive. One way to fix that in a way is to dual apply, kind of like Adriana talked about. It does actually cut the total sum in half because they reset the sum for each ERAS application, like program application you apply to. But like everyone is nervous. Nobody knows what they're doing. Everyone's like figuring all this out together, and it's going to be what it's going to be. And you guys will match, and it all works out, and everything will be great. So just breathe.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone.
I have a quick question. So first of all, thank you guys so much for kind of attending. I know you guys are very busy, so I appreciate that. So I'm planning to apply to internal medicine. So I guess this is like more directed just people, I guess, who have maybe special internal medicine. So I know that you said, you know, everyone is kind of scared and everyone is kind of approaching. Is there any way, have you gotten some insight into how your internal medicine like program director is kind of like planning to approach you guys as applicants? Is there some stuff that you guys are going to be focusing more than others than you usually? I know, again, no one really knows, but any insight would be appreciated given the uncertainty.
Yeah, so I know for my program, when I was speaking to my program director, she mentioned that, you know, one of the things that she may be doing now is actually raising her standards. So she's thinking about, you know, for this year, you know, weeding out people below a certain score that she maybe wouldn't have done on previous years. So really raising her step scores, expectations for that. And just that this is going to make your ERAS application all the more important because that's really all they have of you. You know, they can't see one person to see, you know, is this person weird? Is this person going to fit in? They don't have that. So your ERAS application is going to be all the more important in terms of how you're building it, what you're putting on it. So really, really focus on that. And then, sorry, just to add a little bit more to the last question, my program said that, you know, they may have a day where they will actually allow people to come in, and whoever wants to fly in on that day, if your schedules are open, you're able to fly in and see the program. And as well, they were thinking about doing the typical like in-house presentations over Zoom. So you can still get somewhat of a sense of the program.
Dan or Jessica, do you have any insight on this from your program directors?
No, honestly, with COVID, even really started addressing next year's application process. But, you know, we have like so much scheduled academic stuff that we're doing right now through Zoom. Like we're doing whole class educational meetings and breaking off into smaller meetings Zoom. So, you know, I wouldn't be surprised that they're able to still simulate, you know, a relatively normal interview day via Zoom, if that, you know, still has to be the case next year.
We've really upped our social media game. I know I'm MedPeds, but our medicine department is also doing that. Like they've revamped the Instagram, they've revamped Twitter, they're making a Facebook, they're making a TikTok, like literally everything to try and like engage with applicants. So Med Twitter is actually a very thriving environment. Adriana's pretty famous, so go her. She rocks. But it's like a lot of clinical discussion happens there. A lot of medical social discussion happens there. And not that you need to go be a Twitter person, but if you follow them, like we care. We're like, oh, look, we're getting up there in numbers. Like we're excited about that because we're trying to reach you guys also. So if you're at all inclined, most programs I would imagine are making social media accounts, and you don't even have to engage. Like don't even put that upon yourself if that's not your thing, but just following them is a big deal.
I love Med Twitter, but I highly recommend making one because you can curate it now as an applicant, right? So if you put your name on a new account and they Google your name now, that's going to be the first thing that comes up, and you can easily curate that to exactly what you're interested in. OB-GYN had a really big push last year with putting people on not just Med Twitter, but doing virtual interviews before COVID, and kind of not to waste people's money. That was their kind of push. And they also try to do application caps. So OB-GYN is like trying to change ERAS, but I highly recommend making one, if not just to make one and follow people. They're doing a lot of specialty specific kind of things like this, where you can talk to a lot more people in order to put their names out there as programs, but you can meet program directors on things like this and talk to you, and how else do you get in with them? I mean, you'll never get that FaceTime with a program director otherwise. So if you go on it, even if you have like kind of a dummy account that's got your name and you follow just a few people, look for the hashtags, hashtag Med Twitter, hashtag anesthesiology, anything like that, GME. They'll come up as Zoom links and invites to go to, and you don't have to necessarily have a full like Twitter page. But I highly recommend going, because a lot of the specialties are freaking out right now about next year, and that's kind of their way of reaching you guys is social media.
So I am in internal medicine. I don't think that this is like a necessarily internal medicine specific question. I think everyone will struggle with this. However, one of the things that you're going to have to show is flexibility, because we've all had to show flexibility in our first year. All of our learning is done online now through Zoom conferences. We're like put between all of these different, like, we have morning report that's through Zoom. We have noon conference that's through Zoom. And if you can show flexibility and be like, I have already been doing this through my school, I know everyone will, but if you show and prove to them that you're like Zoom proficient, that you would be able to do one of these meetings, I think that they'll really appreciate it, because it's something that we have struggled with, and you can immediately tell in our program who's good at it and who's not. And it has been a benefit for the people who are.
From like before, when Sobi was saying other things that we recommend, if there's anyone from AUC at any of the programs you're applying to, you need to reach out to them. Like that is, if you don't, you're just being stupid, because that helps get people interviews, like more than you could imagine. Even if it's an alumni from X years ago, like you need to reach out and be like, hey, you have any connection still to program XYZ that you could email the program director for me, because that is a connection. Like use AUC to your benefit, because most of us are willing to help.
At bare minimum, look them up after you get an interview before you actually do the interview day, at bare minimum. But that's how I got my program. Honestly, she's becoming the first chief resident of the program. She let me stay at her house for interviews. She, like, the program director already knew my whole name and story before I even walked in the door. It's a bigger thing than you guys realize. Please, please reach out. Look on the list of residents. Look for other Caribbean students. You guys should be doing this already kind of before to figure out which programs are worth applying to and which aren't.
They actually ask us in residency, they send out an email and they say, do you have anyone that we should offer an interview to? Give us their whatever ID and we'll offer them an interview. So it's like it's a very real thing. They ask us whether or not there's anyone. And I had one person ask, and I gave them the number, and then they got the interview. So.
So I guess in regards to applying to multiple specialties, advice in general around that, but specifically letters of recommendation. Do most people do like completely 3 to 4 separate letters, or have something general, or even ask, I guess, letter writers to write 2 versions of the same one, which I don't know, sounds to me like a big ask. And also personal statements. I know it's individual, but do people write one kind of like general thing and tailor it towards a specialty, or is that completely write 2 completely separate things? And anything else, I guess, we should take into account. Oh, also about, is it a bad thing to apply, if you're applying 2 specialties, to apply to like the same hospital in 2 fields? I've heard that not to do it, but I've also heard that it's okay, so.
So I could speak to this because I know Becca probably applied to IM and PEDS separately and then also Med PEDS together. So it's a little bit different because she wanted to do both, right? So her things could say that she wanted to do both. I applied anesthesia and Becca applied PEDS. I had completely separate letters of recommendation. I had different personal statements. Actually, each personal statement I even tailored. So if there was one program that I rotated at, I even changed the last paragraph and I rotated here. I love this, and this, blah, blah, blah. I also did a couple that I have family in Florida and I wanted to come here. So I changed that kind of last paragraph a few different times. So I had like 13 different personal statements at the end, and you self kind of put them on each one. My letters of rec were completely separate. I didn't apply to a lot of programs at the same place. Anesthesia is significantly more competitive than PEDS, so for me, it was worth it to shoot my shot at the anesthesia programs because that's what I wanted to do more. If there was a PEDS program that I thought I had no shot for their anesthesia program, then yeah, I would apply to their PEDS. So you kind of do it on a case-by-case basis, and it depends on what you really want to do at the end. I kind of didn't even know, maybe September, October, November, I still didn't really pick up a specialty over the other. It's only until I started interviewing that I really pick. Be careful who you email. Be careful what you say in your emails. I mean, you should have reasons of why you want both specialties. For me, I liked critical care type stuff, procedural type stuff, in PEDS also, so I tended to say I wanted to do NICU, similar stuff. You can't fake it. You can't fake it all. So just be careful, be very stringent about who you email. But yeah, definitely have two separate whole things going on. I wouldn't really ask people to write 2 letters of rec for me. I guess if you're in a bind, you might have to. But I kind of had some general ones. So I had like a PEDS, an anesthesia, a PEDS and anesthesia from those specialties. And then my third one was from like Dr. Kirkland, who I worked with, who was very general, who didn't write a specialty that I had in mind. So you could do something like that and use it for both.
So I applied medicine and med peds, and I got, like, med students at American schools can do med peds rotations, but there's not really a way for us to get into that. So I just had like 3 from peds, 3 from medicine, and I over asked for letters, and I don't think either of them were super specific towards one or the other. They mostly just wrote them about general characteristics, but that also might just have been letter writing style because I did my core rotations in England. So I just used them for both, and I just was like, I know this person wrote something good and this person wrote something good, this person wrote something good, and then I put those in. And then if I was applying somewhere that one person, like in the Northeast, a letter from someone in the Northeast who might know people in that realm is more important than that letter in Southern California, for example. So I kind of tailored it that way and used the strengths that way. I also, in case anyone's went to the UK, used like 1 or 2 UK letters and then 2 American letters. Like I paired them so that it wasn't all from the UK where it's an unfamiliar system and they don't really know what's going on. And that was just because I wasn't sure and I was nervous and neurotic. And then in terms of applying, I made this like huge spreadsheet of medicine programs, med peds programs at all of the places that basically everywhere, and just like highlighted which one made more sense to apply to. I didn't dual apply to medicine or med peds at any programs just because they work so intrinsically together that it would have made 0 sense. But if you're doing something like family and anesthesia, it might be possible. You just have to be ready to answer the question if it comes of why did you apply to both. And people won't accept because I was nervous to match. Like that's not an acceptable answer because if you got an interview, you're qualified. In terms of personal statements, I wrote separate and I tailored the bottom paragraph to places that I was super interested in, and I did research as to why I was interested in their programs. The one thing I'll say about personal statements, I recently learned how they're looked at by my program, and they get scaled on a -1, 0, +1 basis, and pretty much 90% of people get 0, which doesn't help or hurt you. Like 3% get -1 if you have terrible grammar, spelling mistakes. It's like some how a bad story, and 5% get +1. And it's basically like if you make the program director cry or something like that. Like literally they count against you. They don't really help you, but it might change this year. I can't imagine it'll change that much, but just like take a breath about those. Don't put all your weight in them.
Thank you.
I can read some of the questions in the thing. So I'm going to read the second one first because I have an answer to this. How early do you recommend reaching out to program coordinators? I feel like since they will see apps in October this year and I'm messaging them now, is it too early? I think you give it a month from the day that you submit your applications. My program literally starts offering interviews the next, I think you submit on a Friday. They start interviewing or sending emails on a Monday. So I think give it, for what I did, I waited with that personal or that letter of recommendation. I waited a month and then I started emailing programs. I still felt like it was a little early, but I don't think that you can be early enough in this case because it's all unknowns.
To answer Benjamin Wing's question about did you reach out to programs before submitting applications, it doesn't sound like Dan did, and I personally did not before submitting applications. I think it's good just to wait to see like which programs offer you an interview off the back, and then just kind of go from there at which programs you want to, contact.
But what is a really good thing is to reach out to alumni at the programs before so that you can like have rapport with them. And then in the middle of October, drop in again and say, hey, I haven't heard from your program yet. They're way more likely to help you out after they already know you than you approaching them in October, November, December. I don't have enough interviews. Can you get me an interview invite? So if you're going to reach out to someone before actual applications go out, just do alumni and people that you might know, actual contacts like people. I wouldn't reach out to just like coordinators and stuff that early. I think it's too early. I also sent a few emails out in like in like December, January, like last minute people dropping out of interviews like that had it scheduled this whole time. A lot of people start dropping them in January and they have a lot more open spots. So they might just swoop you in there. So maybe send a few out again in December, January if you haven't heard from them.
And like Adriana said, she clearly said the word alumni. So I know this past interview season, there were some applicants who reached out to random residents over social media. And my program specifically asked for those people's names so that they could take them off the list. They just really looked down upon that. So, reach out to alumni because you have a sort of connection with them already and it makes sense, but just don't go stalking random residents on Instagram and messaging them and DMing them to try and get you a spot. That looks horrible.
And you can frame it as, hi, I'm an AUC student. How was applying to this specialty coming from AUC? 90% of people from AUC will answer you and kind of give you, we have a pretty good alumni network that way. So if you even frame it that way and just like as a curiosity thing, not as please do me a favor, it's a lot easier to ask them for a favor a few months into the application cycle.
In light of the interview process being virtual, do you have any advice about what programs to ask or how to get a feel for the vibe of the program since we don't want to directly ask something like that? Any tricks that you guys would like to be asked during the interview?
It's really hard. It's really hard for us to kind of speak to that, I think, because that's something we really didn't go through. But I think the first thing off the top of my head would be just to explicitly ask about how the resident, like if there's like a wellness committee or like a social committee that like they really put funds into or have something that they have established to really care for resident wellness, because like the program that I'm at, they put a lot of money every year into the wellness program, which funds like social gatherings for residents, which I think is very, very important. There were a couple places I went to, I won't name names, but they like didn't mention wellness or they didn't have anything like that in their program. And I think that instantly kind of like drives separation between residents, because especially a big program, there's a lot of people to meet. And at places like that, you could strike up friendship and you could strike up relationships at those types of things, and then those eventually will help you and make you feel more comfortable with that residency. But if there's not something like that and you have to kind of go create relationships yourself, I could see it being kind of isolating. So if I was in your situation going through virtual interviews, that's something that I would ask a lot of questions about.
I would also add that every place that I interviewed at, even there was one that was in the middle of nowhere, and I actually, when I saw that I got an interview, was surprised that I didn't take it off my list. And then I went and interviewed there. Every single place I was like, oh, I could picture myself here. And I got interviews from places that I had never heard of. I'm at a program that I had never heard of, and I'm very happy. So no matter what their website looks like or whatever, anything going up until the moment that you start speaking with people, it's very hard to judge. And I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised no matter where you go, especially coming from some of the sites that you rotate at AUC from.
I think something that you guys can ask that showed a lot is something I asked usually at the dinners, but you guys can still probably ask on virtual interviews, just maybe phrase it a little bit better, is like what they do, like do they hang out outside of work? Like what do residents do like when they're not working? Are there things in the area? And like Dan said, Dan like pictured himself in that location. They want to see residents that are picturing themselves in their program already. That means you're serious, you're very interested. You know, and anyone that would move anywhere for 3 to 5 years wants to know what they're doing after. How's the area? So those questions are really important. And in the beginning of my interview cycle, I didn't really put a lot of emphasis on it because I did feel a little uncomfortable asking, like, how are the relationships between the resident years? Do you guys hang out outside? Do you guys tend to hang out outside and do things in the area, you know, when you're not working? But that ended up being one of the most important parts of one of my rank list at the end, is how the residents got along with each other and how was the area and do I want to live there? So don't be afraid to ask that. It's okay.
So in consideration for everyone's time, because it is 6 o'clock now, I want to ask the panelists for their final like parting words of, I don't know, remarks or whatever. And I just want to say, if you guys do have more questions, you can send them to my AUC email, and I will get the panelists to answer them on their own time, and I'll send them out. So panelists, any final remarks?
Just try to relax, enjoy the process. You guys have all worked super hard, and rank with your guts. You know, wherever you want to go, apply there and rank. Don't play the game with how they're going to rank you. How are you going to rank them? Wherever you feel like is the right place for you, rank them first.
Thanks, Jess.
Mm-hmm.
And the match, like, it works. It works somehow magically, and you end up where you're supposed to be, and you get the education you're supposed to be, and meet the people you're supposed to be. And whether it's something you believe in, or, you know, your belief in the universe or the match process or whatever it is, like, it does work out somehow. It just does. And just like Jess said, enjoy it. I loved interviews. Like, be yourself. Have fun, smile. Don't try and be someone you're not on the Zoom calls. Like, just, if you're happy-go-lucky, be happy-go-lucky, and then they'll like you, or they'll say, she's too like goofy for our program, and then you don't want to be there anyway, so it's fine. And just, you know, enjoy and reach out for help, because really we are all here to help you, and we know how stressful it is, and we would be honored to help you guys get where you want to go.
I would say be proactive with the places, like I said before, that you really want to go. So if after a month or so you haven't heard anything, reach out. You'll get interviews that way. And also, like Becca said, just breathe, take your time with your application, do what you're supposed to do, obviously, and things should work out. So don't let your anxiety take over. I know it's hard, easier said than done, but.
And don't be discouraged if you don't get your first, second, third, you know, wherever you end up matching on your rank list. You know, all of these programs are going to give you a good medical education, and the ones that don't are ones that are going to be fairly obvious to you. So if you end up, you know, on your last rank place, like, you're probably going to end up at a good program still. Just enjoy it. Residency is, you know, people make it out to be this horrible thing, this scary thing, and yes, it's going to be all those things, but it's also going to be some of the best times of your life. So just enjoy the ride, enjoy your first year of residency, enjoy the interview season, because these are really fun times, regardless of what anyone says.
Thanks, Ashley.
I just want to echo something that was already said. Be respectful to everyone. Be yourself. Be your authentic self. Like Becca said, you will end up where you want to end up. The attraction of your personality and their personality will match. And every person you come in contact with, send thank yous to, send emails to. Don't feel like you're bugging them, but you don't want to do that. But just be respectful every time. If you approach everything professionally and respectfully, you'll be golden. And that's what they're looking for. They're looking for someone that's going to work well with them on a 24-hour overnight shift. They don't want someone that's going to, be a stiff. So, make jokes, be happy, but be professional.
Thanks, Sage.
I definitely can't tell you how important it is to follow up. I wouldn't have gotten the interviews that I got, or even an interview at the program that I'm at right now, if I wouldn't have sent multiple emails. The worst thing that can happen is you send 2 emails and no one responds, and then you just say, okay, I sent the 2 emails. You will probably regret it for a long time if you don't send the emails, because they expect you to kind of be persistent and annoying. And most importantly, just be yourself. Our program director is looking specifically in his mind. He tells us, I have places that I want to fit certain people. I'm looking for someone who's a leader, someone who's a follower. So you don't have to be this someone you're not. Just stick to everything that's gotten you to where you are today, and everything is going to end up working out just fine.
Thanks, Dan.
A hot tip for interview day, because I'm a very nervous person, is I would talk to all the other applicants and find somebody who was more nervous than me, and then that made me feel a lot more comfortable.
It's a very Clint tip. Thank you.
Because even though you think you're going to be the worst or be the most nervous, you're not.
You never
everything. And you never are. But if you can convince yourself that someone else is, you'll be fine.
Also, I know, like it was kind of mentioned, you guys might be saving some money traveling. I would highly recommend wide applying. The best situation you can be in is turning down interviews. I still don't think you should even do that. But you can make your decision all the way at the end up until rankless. If you hated a program that you got an interview at and you wasted a few hours on a Zoom call, you don't need to rank them. But give your best shot, put your best shot forward. Don't regret not applying to as many in the beginning. Please apply to places that you think you have a shot at and places you want to go, and then have your rank list to decide that later.
Awesome. If there's nothing else, guys, thank you so much for joining us. And this will be posted at some point somewhere, and your CSGA will tell you where that is posted. Okay. Thank you guys so much for joining today. And good luck in the residency process.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.